you so much. So we have a few minutes for questions and a bit of discussion. We have some microphones around. If there's something you would like to ask, reflect on from what you've just heard, just raise your hand up.
With the Climate Emergency Fund, and your words were so deeply moving. I found myself taking notes through much of what you were saying. And I was wondering if you could explore more the idea of consciousness without conscience, because I feel like we are in a time of imbalance and looking for answers, which actions we must take in order to help restore that balance. And how do you suggest that we navigate those decisions?
Yeah, I think it has to do more with the word, and I think I could explain it the best I could to give you an answer. Wakan is to consciously apply mystery to everything. And you can't do that with a conscience. So if you're consciously aware and everything has energy in it, which I described as energy, describing it as, don't even have a word for it. So describing the energy and then the motion of the energy requires no conscience. It's just observing and feeling and moving with it. So Wakan is probably the best word that I could come up with in this language, in my language, for it to consciously apply mystery for everything, and it only requires consciousness. Right? Like a tree is conscious, never with conscience.
That's so beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very, very profound, and a lot of food for thought and for reflection. Just curious to understand, in terms of your commitment right now to taking what you've shared with us to others, can you talk a little bit about your own journey and sort of where you'd like to take this wisdom and how you want to bring that to a larger audience and group, if that's your intention?
Thank you. Yes, the message has always been bigger than me. Since it can't be any other way, there's no word for I, me, my, ours. So it's always about understanding as much as you can the energy. And so when I take it out in this world practically, it's through the radio. And I never thought I still get nervous in front of people because it's not about me. So one day in October 12th, in 1992, there were about 200,000 Native people, indigenous peoples, that came to San Francisco to celebrate our 500-year living, getting through 500 years of colonization. And there was no news reports or anything, but there were police aligned on the roofs and along, and with guns pointed at us because they were afraid of us, but we didn't do anything. So we walked and came back, and out of that, there was an old man who obviously to me was from Mexico. And he came up to me, a very little guy here, I'm 6'2", and he came up to me with a big hat and he says, "It's your turn to speak, it's your turn to voice." And I had no idea what that meant until I got back to where I lived at the time in Washington State, and I was walking by a radio station, and someone was yelling out the window, "Oh, you're an Indian, you're a Native American, could you come up and tell us all, could you read this?" So I was starting to read it. Never been on the radio, something said go. And it said, "Columbus sailed the ocean blue," or something like this. And I'm not going to say that. And so they said, "Well, say something." So I started to speak like this. And the phone lights were, I said 5 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes top. And the phone lights were all lit up. I stayed on that line for like an hour and a half, just talking. So someone says, you need to be on the radio. So I started a radio program at that time, different names throughout the time, but because I was an angry young man, I named it Exposing the Apologetic Predator. No need to explain that one, right? So that came from there. At that time, I needed to express what most people at that time thought indigenous was a plant. We had to change that explanation of it. So that's basically how I would say the message came, is to the audio that I do, oral tradition, radio, long before computer and podcasting came along, was to bring that so people would listen, because I do know that people listen to radio, engage more themselves in watching TV.
My name is Kase, and I'm from Namibia, and I'm interested in the similarities of the language, and thank you for a beautiful piece that you've given us. So in my language, if you ask me what is my name, I need to give you a sentence. I need to give you the context of my birth and why I was named. So I had a sense that there is a similarities, because naming in English is quite often one word. For us, it's a sentence, it's a paragraph involving the context. So is it similar in the Lakota language?
Yes. So my name, Tiokasin. I have 4 names: Tiokasin, Chetanzi, Liki, Bahami, Chaji, Oyate, Tokahe, Chake, Tashuke, Nati. So just before you ask, I'm going to explain it. Tiokasin means something like, I'm putting in a noun form, means spirit coming in. The second is Hawk who touches the sun, long explanations. Third name is, what do I say? He puts others before himself, puts all likelihood before himself. Last name is Ghosthorse. Yeah, so that's the value of her name. So yes.
Thank you for this amazing presentation. How do we better educate ourselves about the native language here in the United States? Especially this last summer, I took a journey around the western part of the U.S. and I was quite impressed with the beauty of the West. So what resources are for some of us who usually don't use the internet and want to read a book? You could enlighten us with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Very good question, and thank you for standing up. You know, that's a Lakota thing. We address each other, we stand up to talk. Yeah, because you carry a certain energy. I want to bring attention to that. I'm thinking about how sophisticated concepts, how the world works centuries before, right? And I hope this has to do with answering the question, where we came together, well, in 1994, we came together with linguists, scientists, people who studied in that group of quantum physics. They came together, I think it was for 2 weeks, and what happened out of that was they equated native languages with mathematics, and they found that they were speaking the same thing. Native languages are encoded with quantum physics, and you see that relationship having into relationship now. So it's like we speaking our words. Connected, we know, means kind of related, but How about relationship? When I speak to young people, they're like, connected? You mean like my phone? And I said, no, it's like, would you rather say Earth or Mother Earth or planet? And most of the kids would say Mother Earth, because that's where they're fresh from their mothers. So it's not connected or disconnected, it's how you relate, relationship with the earth. So we never lead, we don't teach leadership, we don't teach followership, we teach people how to walk with. We show people to walk with. We need to walk with the earth, not leave the earth, because we can't teach her any lessons. We can't follow earth because we are that in a moment. So with that, I hope I answered your question.
So thank you very, very much for something very, very beautiful. My question is about children. You were just talking about children. How do we start again in teaching our children? Not within only the Lakota Nation, but for all of us. How have you thought about that, and what are you doing teaching children? Thank you.
So I use the word teach very liberally. We have no word for teach. Think about this. How do you do this? We show. We show them without instructing. This is how you do something. No, we show them so that they have freely their own choice. I can do this or I can do that. And they feel good about that. We never tell them no. We don't shout at them. We never, it's like we don't discipline them almost, because we know that they come with all of that consciousness. So we show them, because that's our job as older parents. And I want to give my daughter, she was 4 at the time, so much credit. She asked me, Dad, you're always talking about, this is a 4-year-old, you're always talking about Mother Earth. Everybody around me is talking about Mother Earth. And I said, yeah, it's true. And she says, but Dad, if Mother Earth is our mother, then who's Mother Earth's mother? And immediately I called my mother. And my mother said, Nasula. Seed. Seed. Heart. Chante. So the earth comes with education. This is why in nature, when I was a 3rd grader, we were passing these natural tests into to 12th grade and into the freshman year of college. We were 3rd graders, but the rest of the tests as Native people, we were just really bad at mathematics and English. But when it came to nature, we were tops. And they thought we were cheating, because we lived with nature. That gives me these children here, if I have time. Einstein also, he came in 1930 to Hopi, to Arizona. And he spent time with them. And if I could paraphrase him, that time in 1930, he came to understand he wanted to visit Native people who were so remote. At that time in 1930, they didn't know what books were, radios, they didn't know what civilization was. They were still in that primal good state, purity. And he came away from them and he said, wow, I've been to a lot of places in my life and I've seen all kinds of children, and how the educational process carries us into a progressive mind thought. My words. And he said, I'm paraphrasing, 12-year-old children of the Hopi people are the most prepared to understand the theory of relativity, because they were living it. You see, so this is what we are missing, the theory of relativity, the relationship. We forgot how to live that. And so this is the attempt at it, to live with the earth, with the people who still speak the languages of the earth. And I think that's what needs the biggest support, strength. And now I could go into English and say, how are we going to do that? Well, I don't know. That's not for me to answer, but I can show you. So that's how we do it with children. We show them.
Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and knowledge.
Thank you, everybody.